You know how it feels when you plug your smartphone in overnight and you wake up and the screen says it's at 100%?
Right. It looks totally full.
Yeah. But then the moment you open like a single application, the battery indicator immediately plummets to 40%.
Oh, I hate that.
Right. And then the phone just abruptly dies 10 minutes later.
Well, I mean, that happens because the battery itself is fundamentally degraded. Like, it looks completely full on the surface because it's been resting on the charger. But there is simply no actual chemical capacity left inside to hold the charge. The infrastructure is compromised.
And that deceiving feeling where you think to yourself, I just slept for 8 hours, or I just had a whole weekend off. I should be totally fine to tackle this project.
But then you crash an hour into Monday morning.
Exactly. That is exactly where we are starting this deep dive today. Welcome in. Whether you are currently feeling overwhelmed by the relentless demands of your life, or trying to figure out how to support a friend who is visibly running on empty,
Yeah, which is so common right now.
or you are just looking to optimize your own mental resilience for the future, you're in the right place. Today, we have gotten our hands on excerpts from this really fascinating mental health workbook that essentially acts as a survival guide for the modern era. We're going to unpack the architecture of burnout and, how to rebuild that internal battery.
And what makes this source particularly compelling is that it refuses to offer you empty platitudes.
Right. No toxic positivity here.
Exactly. It doesn't just tell you to take a bubble bath. It provides a highly structured, evidence-based approach to recovery, blending rigorous psychological mechanisms with some profound spiritual and existential grounding.
So we're going to guide you through the blueprint laid out in this material. Instead of just jumping to the finish line, we're going to figure out how to accurately diagnose the real issue, how to rewire the bad code in our heads, how to build a tangible daily maintenance routine, and finally, how to put some long-term structural fixes in place to protect your peace permanently.
It's a full overhaul.
It really is.
Yeah.
But before you can fix a degraded battery, you have to admit that it is actually broken. The workbook doesn't start with quick fix solutions. It starts with deep and, frankly, somewhat uncomfortable reflection.
Yeah, the hard stuff.
Right. The very first prompt asks you to recall the last time you felt truly drained or despondent at work. But it doesn't just ask about your mood. It specifically asks you to focus on how that exhaustion felt in both your body and your mind. Okay, let's unpack this physical side for a second.
Sure.
Asking how burnout feels in the body is like checking the check engine light on your dashboard instead of just turning up the radio to ignore a weird rattling sound under the hood.
That is a great way to put it.
Because we so often treat burnout as just a bad mood or like a mental slump.
Well, what's fascinating here is the workbook's absolute insistence on that somatic connection.
Somatic meaning.
Somatic meaning the way our brain's psychological stress directly manipulates our physical organs. Burnout is an actual physiological event.
Oh, wow. So it's not just a feeling.
No, not at all. When you are perpetually overwhelmed, your nervous system gets stuck in a sympathetic state, meaning it is constantly flooding your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline.
Jeez.
So asking how it feels in the body forces you to recognize the physical reality of that chemical flood. Like, is it a persistent tightness in your chest? Is it a shallow breathing pattern that you haven't even noticed?
Or like chronic tension headaches,
Yeah.
right, or digestive issues.
Exactly. By identifying your specific physical check engine light, you stop the cycle of denial. You realize it is not all in your head. Your body is systematically failing under the load.
Grounding the experience in physical reality makes it impossible to ignore. But once you acknowledge the physical toll, the workbook shifts to the cognitive side. And the second reflection prompt asks a question that I really want to wrestle with.
Okay, let's hear it.
It asks, what lies or negative thoughts come to you most often when you feel burned out? I mean, I hear the logic behind that phrasing, but if I am deeply exhausted and feeling like I'm dropping the ball everywhere,
Yeah.
calling my own thoughts lies almost feels like I'm gaslighting myself. Like, how do we tell the difference between a real constructive warning sign from our brain like, hey, you really messed up that presentation, and a burnout lie?
That's a really fair pushback. It comes down to the scope of the thought. A constructive warning sign is specific, and it's behavioral. It says, you missed that deadline because you didn't allocate enough time.
Okay.
A burnout lie attacks your core identity and permanently projects into the future. It says, you are a complete failure, or you will never catch up, or even everyone else can handle this life except you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, those are catastrophic, absolute statements, and biologically, they are generated by an exhausted, threat-focused brain. Labeling them as lies is a deliberate technique called cognitive decoupling.
Cognitive decoupling.
Yeah.
Meaning you are unlinking the thought from your actual identity.
Precisely. If we just call them negative thoughts, we still grant them an aura of truth. We think, well, it's a negative thought, but it's an accurate assessment of my current terrible situation.
Right, like I'm just being realistic.
Exactly. By forcefully categorizing the catastrophic thought as a lie, you create immediate cognitive distance. It forces you to look at that internal voice and say, I am hearing you, but I do not have to believe you because you are a fundamentally unreliable narrator right now.
It strips the inner critic of its authority. And that makes the third reflection prompt so vital, which is about finding anchors.
Ah, yes.
The workbook asks, which scripture, prayer, or personal mantra has helped you when life felt heavy? How can you remind yourself of it daily? It's like having a fail-safe or, preloaded emergency software that boots up when the main system crashes.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it. In the middle of an acute burnout spiral or a panic response, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational, problem-solving part of your brain, essentially goes offline.
It just shuts down.
Pretty much. Blood flow is literally diverted away from it and towards your amygdala, which is the fear center. You cannot rely on your ability to reason your way out of deep despondency in real time.
Because your brain is literally in survival mode.
Right. Your working memory is compromised. You need something preloaded. A scripture, a prayer, a secular mantra like, this too shall pass. What matters is that it is a pre-decided truth you can instantly access when your cognitive processing power drops to zero.
So if the first step is recognizing those physiological symptoms and calling out the burnout lies, the obvious next question is, how do we overwrite that bad code permanently? We have to replace the lies with the truth, which leads us into the mindset rewiring phase.
Right, the affirmations.
Yeah, the workbook provides a very specific list of affirmations for daily strength. Things like, I am more than my job title. Rest is my right, not my weakness. My worth is not defined by productivity. I choose progress, not perfection.
Right.
And finally, God is close to the brokenhearted, and I am not alone.
It's a powerful list.
It is. But here's where it gets really interesting, because looking at these statements, they are completely countercultural. We live in a hustle culture world.
We really do.
An economy that literally monetizes our attention and rewards overwork. Like, how are you supposed to internalize that worth is not defined by productivity when your rent, your healthcare, and your social standing often depend entirely on your productivity?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we can see exactly why the authors chose these specific concepts. These affirmations are targeting the systemic, societal root of modern burnout.
The root cause.
Right. From early childhood, we are conditioned by our institutions to equate our output with our inherent value. You get an A on the test, you are validated, you hit your corporate sales quota, you are rewarded.
You're a good person if you produce.
Exactly. And over decades, that conditioning creates neural pathways that say, if I am not producing, I am worthless. To rewire that mindset requires immense neuroplasticity, and frankly, it requires you to actively rebel against the dominant narrative of the society you live in.
And it's an act of rebellion to declare that you have inherent value simply because you exist, regardless of what you checked off a to-do list today.
And notice the sophisticated blending of concepts in that list of affirmations. You have rigorous, evidence-based cognitive behavioral therapy, like choosing progress, not perfection, which actively disrupts the black and white, all-or-nothing thinking that plagues perfectionists.
Yeah.
But that secular psychology sits directly alongside profound spiritual comfort, like the idea that God is close to the brokenhearted. For the reader who holds those beliefs, this offers a multi-layered safety net.
That makes total sense.
It addresses the clinical need to lower impossible standards and the deeply human existential need to feel seen and held by a higher power in moments of profound isolation.
Rewiring our thoughts is the crucial mental baseline. But if we are still running at 100 miles an hour physically, those beautiful affirmations are just going to bounce right off us.
Oh, absolutely.
Mindset without mechanical change is just wishful thinking. We have to change our physical behaviors. This brings us to the mechanics of recovery, moving from the internal dialogue to the external world through a weekly mental health action checklist. And looking at this list, the item that immediately jumps out at me is the screen detox.
A fan favorite, I'm sure.
Right. The workbook mandates disconnecting from screens and work for at least 1 to 2 hours daily to recharge. To me, this isn't just about resting your eyes. It's a crisis of attention allocation. It is literally putting our own brains on airplane mode.
I like that.
Because when your smartphone is in a dead zone, constantly searching for a cell tower signal, the battery drains twice as fast. That is what our brains are doing when we're constantly refreshing emails or doom scrolling. We are desperately searching for a signal.
You are absolutely right. The brain's threat detection system is being hijacked. Biologically, the infinite scroll of a screen keeps our visual and neurological systems in a state of hyperarousal.
Like we're always on edge.
Yes. We are scanning for threats like an angry email from a boss, or for variable rewards like social media validation. That constant vigilance requires massive amounts of metabolic energy.
Which we don't have if we're burned out.
Exactly. By enforcing a strict 1 to 2 hour digital quarantine, you are removing the stimuli that force the nervous system into a sympathetic fight or flight state. You are creating a controlled environment where the brain is finally allowed to shift back into the parasympathetic state, which is responsible for resting, digesting, and repairing cellular damage.
That makes the analog nature of the rest of the checklist so much more important. Another point on this action plan that fascinated me was the instruction for tackling overwhelming duties. It says to break a big task into smaller, manageable steps. Wait, let me quote it right. It explicitly adds, and celebrate completing them.
Yes, the celebration part.
Why is the celebration part mandated? I understand task breakdown for productivity, but why isn't quietly checking the box enough? Like, why do we have to manufacture a celebration?
Because checking a box is merely an administrative function, celebrating is a neurological intervention. It is entirely about the dopamine loop.
The dopamine loop.
Yeah, dopamine is not just a pleasure chemical. It is the molecule of motivation and reward prediction. When you are severely burned out, your brain's dopamine reserves are depleted.
Oh, wow.
That is why everything feels like a slog and why anticipating a massive task feels physically painful. You have no chemical fuel. By intentionally breaking a massive task into micro steps and then consciously pausing to celebrate, even just by taking a breath, smiling, and saying out loud, "Good job, I finished that email," you are artificially manufacturing a microdose of dopamine.
So the celebration is the engine starter. You are using the dopamine hit from step 1 as the literal chemical fuel to give you the motivation to start step 2.
Exactly. It isn't self-indulgence. It is a necessary biological mechanism for creating forward momentum when your natural drive is broken. And if you look at the entirety of the behaviors suggested in this weekly maintenance checklist, they fall into 3 brilliant holistic buckets.
Okay, what are they?
First, you have relational support. The workbook asks you to reach out to a trusted friend, mentor, or counselor. We are social primates. We actually co-regulate our nervous systems through connection with safe individuals.
The second bucket seems to be interpersonal processing. The checklist asks you to practice daily gratitude by listing 3 things you are thankful for and to journal your emotions. But I notice it specifically says to journal at least twice a week rather than demanding a daily entry.
Which is a remarkably compassionate design.
Yeah.
Demanding a daily journal entry for someone who is already burned out just turns recovery into another high-pressure task to fail at. Twice a week provides the necessary emotional exhaust valve to process your internal backlog without triggering perfectionism.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
And the third bucket focuses on physiological and spiritual grounding, taking at least 1 full day of rest per week alongside practices like prayer, meditation, or deep breathing when feeling overwhelmed.
The deep breathing is particularly critical because it directly stimulates the vagus nerve, which acts as the physical brake pedal for your body's stress response. But, this raises an important question. Looking at this comprehensive list, how intentional must we be to schedule this kind of rest before our bodies simply force us to take it?
It's the old saying, right? If you don't pick a day to rest, your body will eventually pick it for you. And it usually takes the form of a severe illness, a chronic pain flare-up, or a total psychological breakdown.
Yep.
A full day of rest per week isn't a luxury item you earn by finishing all your chores. It is a structural necessity to prevent the catastrophic failure of the human system.
It is load-bearing architecture for your life.
Which sets up the final phase of this workbook perfectly. All of this daily and weekly maintenance is incredibly valuable, but we can't just live in a constant cycle of barely recovering from the week just to survive the next one.
No, that's just treading water.
Right. We need long-term infrastructure. The outline shifts to practical next steps, offering 3 bold directives for moving forward. First, identify 1 small habit you can start tomorrow to manage stress. Second, commit to one professional step, like researching a counselor, joining a support group, or setting firm boundaries at work. And third, find one accountability partner to walk with you in your mental health journey. So what does this all mean for the big picture? When I look at these directives, the emphasis on the accountability partner is what really grounds this. It sends a definitive message that sustainable mental health thrives in community.
The great lie of burnout, tying back to our earlier discussion, is the belief that you are entirely alone, and that because you broke yourself, you have to fix yourself by yourself in isolation.
Right, that it's all on you.
By mandating an accountability partner, the workbook shatters that illusion. An accountability partner isn't just a cheerleader. They serve as an external mirror when your internal compass is shattered. They are the person who can look at you and say, I notice you haven't put your phone on airplane mode today, or you are speaking really harshly about yourself right now. Are you believing the lies again?
They hold the blueprint for you when you are too tired to read it yourself.
And structurally, I really admire the workbook's escalation strategy here. It is deeply trauma-informed.
How so?
Well, look at the progression we just walked through. It asks you to start with internal reflection, just sitting quietly and noticing the physical tension in your chest. Then it moves to daily cognitive habits, the internal affirmations. Then it scales up to weekly behavioral maintenance, the checklist.
Yeah.
And it only culminates right here at the very end with bold structural life changes. Demanding professional clinical support or enforcing strict boundaries with your employer are major high-stakes shifts in how you operate in the world.
You don't start by setting a massive confrontational boundary at work on day one when your battery is at 1% and you are terrified of losing your job.
Exactly.
You start by breathing, you start by untangling the lies, you start by journaling twice a week, and then once you have built up some baseline capacity, you take the professional step. You build capacity before you demand performance, even if that performance is just advocating for your own well-being.
It paces the recovery to match the energy reserves. It sets the user up for sustainable success rather than another cycle of ambitious failure.
So let's recap this incredibly practical journey. We started by recognizing the physiological reality of burnout, refusing to ignore the check engine light. We explored the technique of cognitive decoupling, labeling our catastrophic thoughts as lies to strip them of their power.
Right.
We looked at rewiring our minds by actively rebelling against hustle culture and treating rest as an inherent human right. We unpacked a weekly maintenance checklist designed to manufacture motivation through dopamine loops and quiet the threat detection system through digital detoxes.
A lot of ground covered.
For sure.
Yeah.
And finally, we discussed building long-term infrastructure through community accountability and structural boundaries.
It is a profound step-by-step manual for reclaiming your autonomy.
And so as you are listening to this right now, I want to challenge you. Look at your own life.
Yeah.
Look at the battery gauge on your internal dashboard. Do not try to implement this entire workbook at once. That defeats the entire purpose.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Just pick one thing. Identify one small habit from everything we've discussed today. Maybe it's the 1-hour screen quarantine. Maybe it's repeating the phrase, I choose progress, not perfection, when you feel yourself spiraling. Or maybe it's just reaching out to one trusted friend to say, I'm running on empty. Pick one thing and start it tomorrow.
That is the perfect starting line.
Yeah.
And as you consider which of those steps to take, I want to leave you with one final, lingering idea to mull over. The workbook mentions setting boundaries at work as a key professional step for protecting your own mental health. But think about the ripple effect of that action. What if setting strict boundaries at work doesn't just protect your own individual battery? What if it actually acts as a radical catalyst that alters the power dynamics and expectations of your entire workplace?
Oh, like redesigning the power grid for the whole office.
Exactly. By firmly protecting your own time, by visibly logging off at a reasonable hour, by refusing to answer non-emergency emails on a Sunday, by speaking openly about your need for rest, you aren't just insulating yourself, you are actively dismantling the toxic culture around you.
Wow.
You might inadvertently be giving everyone else in that office the unspoken permission they desperately need to do exactly the same thing. Your personal boundary, your refusal to buy into the lies of burnout, could be the very spark that starts shifting the entire system for everyone else.
Healing yourself might be the most effective way to heal your community. That is an incredibly powerful thought to walk away with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of recovery. Take care of yourselves, protect your peace, and we will catch you next time.